Hugo Sperrle was born on February 7, 1885, in Ludwigsburg, a town in the Kingdom of Württemberg, within the German Empire. His early life gave no indication that he would one day rise to the highest ranks of the German military establishment, or that his name would be bound up with the tumultuous history of the Second World War. Like many boys of his generation, he grew up in a society that prized military service and discipline, and at a time when the prestige of the German army was immense following the unification of Germany in 1871 and the empire's ascension as a major European power. In 1903, at the age of 18, Sperrle joined the Imperial German Army, beginning a career that would see him move from the ground forces to the new world of aviation, and eventually to the position of Field Marshal in Adolf Hitler's Luftwaffe. During the First World War, Sperrle served initially as an officer in the infantry, but like many ambitious young men, he recognized the revolutionary potential of air power. By 1914, military aviation was still in its infancy, but Germany, Britain, and France were experimenting with reconnaissance flights and early aerial combat. Sperrle transferred to the air service, where he learned the fundamentals of military aviation that would define his later career. He was not a fighter ace, nor did he achieve fame as an individual pilot. Instead, his talents lay in organization, coordination, and command. The war introduced him to the complexities of integrating aviation into broader military strategy, an experience that would prove vital 2 decades later. When the war ended in 1918, the Treaty of Versailles imposed harsh restrictions on Germany. Among these was the near-total abolition of its air force. Sperrle, like many officers, faced a difficult future. He remained in the Reichswehr, the drastically reduced German army, and served quietly through the interwar years. These were years of frustration for many German officers, but they were also years of clandestine preparation. Secret training programs, often conducted in cooperation with the Soviet Union, allowed Germany to retain a pool of trained aviators and to experiment with new doctrines. Sperrle's steady rise through the ranks of this hidden structure reflected both his competence and the trust placed in him by his superiors. By the early 1930s, as the Weimar Republic collapsed and Adolf Hitler rose to power, Sperrle's career entered a new phase. Hitler's open defiance of the Versailles restrictions meant the rebuilding of a German air force. In 1935, the Luftwaffe was formally established under the command of Hermann Göring, one of Hitler's closest allies. Sperrle, now an experienced officer in his 50s, was transferred into the Luftwaffe at its inception. He became known as a reliable, pragmatic commander, less flamboyant than others like Ernst Udet, but respected for his calm, methodical approach. Sperrle's first major test came in the Spanish Civil War, which erupted in 1936. Nazi Germany supported General Francisco Franco's nationalists against the Republican government, sending troops, tanks, and most famously the Condor Legion. Sperrle was appointed commander of this expeditionary air force. Under his leadership, the Condor Legion provided crucial support to Franco, bombing Republican positions, transporting troops, and testing new tactics that would later be employed in World War II. The bombing of Guernica in April 1937, carried out by German planes, became infamous as one of the first aerial assaults on a civilian population. Although Sperrle himself did not pilot the missions, he oversaw the operations and accepted their results as part of modern warfare. For the Nazis, Spain was both a proving ground and a propaganda tool. For Sperrle, it was a demonstration of his ability to conduct complex air operations abroad, and he was rewarded with promotion to General of Aviators in 1937, when Germany invaded Poland in September 1939. Sparking World War II, Sperrle was given command of Luftflotte 3, one of the Luftwaffe's major air fleets. Stationed in Western Germany, his forces played a key role in the campaigns against France and the Low Countries in 1940. Luftflotte 3 supported the rapid advance of the German army through Belgium and northern France, striking enemy airfields, railways, and troop concentrations. Sperrle coordinated closely with ground commanders, ensuring that the Luftwaffe's devastating power was felt at critical moments. His command contributed significantly to the swift collapse of France in June 1940, a victory that stunned the world and seemed to confirm the effectiveness of Germany's new style of warfare. The Blitzkrieg. In the summer of 1940, after France fell, Hitler turned his attention to Britain. Sperrle's Luftwaffe 3 was tasked with attacking southern England, particularly ports, airfields, and later cities. During the Battle of Britain, Sperrle's forces launched raids on targets across the country. However, unlike Göring and other Luftwaffe leaders, Sperrle was skeptical of the decision to shift focus from destroying the Royal Air Force's infrastructure to bombing London and other civilian centers. Nonetheless, he carried out his orders, overseeing wave after wave of bombing missions. The failure of the Luftwaffe to break British resistance marked a turning point in the war. For Sperrle, it was the beginning of a long, defensive struggle. By 1941, Germany had invaded the Soviet Union and air fleets were shifted eastward. Sperrle remained in the west, commanding Luftwaffe 3, which was responsible for defending occupied France and the Low Countries from growing Allied air attacks. As the war dragged on, his role became less glamorous but still vital. The Allies intensified their bombing campaigns, striking German industrial centers and transportation networks. Sperrle had to manage limited resources, dwindling aircraft, and increasingly desperate attempts to fend off overwhelming Allied air power. Despite his frustrations, Sperrle continued to be rewarded for his loyalty and service. In 1940, he had been promoted to Field Marshal, one of the highest ranks in the German military. His decorations included the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross, bestowed for his leadership. Yet by 1944, as the Allies prepared for the invasion of Normandy, the Luftwaffe was a shadow of its former self. Sperrle's Luftwaffe 3 was unable to mount an effective defense against the D-Day landings in June 1944. Allied air superiority was overwhelming, and Sperrle could do little to change the outcome. His forces were gradually destroyed, and his influence waned. By the final months of the war, Sperrle had become a peripheral figure. In September 1944, he was retired from active command. Unlike some of his colleagues, he did not take part in the desperate last battles for Berlin. When Germany surrendered in May 1945, Sperrle was captured by the Allies. His fate would now be decided not on the battlefield, but in the courts. The Nuremberg Trials were convened by the victorious Allies to prosecute leading figures of the Nazi regime for war crimes and crimes against humanity. Among those indicted were the political, military, and economic leaders of Hitler's Reich. Sperrle was included among the defendants in the High Command trial, one of the later proceedings that targeted senior military officers. The charges against him centered on his role in the Spanish Civil War and in the Luftwaffe's bombing campaigns, particularly the deliberate targeting of civilian populations. Yet unlike Göring, who became the most famous defendant, Sperrle was neither flamboyant nor outspoken. He appeared at Nuremberg as an elderly man, visibly frail, suffering from ill health. His defense argued that he had simply been a professional soldier, following orders, and that he had not personally devised or advocated for the bombing of civilians. While the prosecution pointed to the bombing of Guernica and the Luftwaffe's raids on cities in Britain and France, the evidence tying Sperrle directly to criminal intent was less concrete than in other cases. Moreover, the standards of international law regarding aerial bombing were not yet fully defined. Strategic bombing, as practiced by both Axis and Allied powers, blurred the line between military and civilian targets. In October 1948, the tribunal acquitted Sperrle of all charges. The court accepted his defense that he had acted within the norms of warfare as they were understood at the time. Unlike Göring, who committed suicide before a scheduled execution, or other generals who were imprisoned, Sperrle was released. The acquittal was controversial. To many, it seemed that Sperrle had escaped justice. Survivors of Guernica and victims of the Blitz might have expected accountability, yet Sperrle walked free, officially absolved by the court. In the years that followed, Sperrle lived quietly in Bavaria. He did not write memoirs, nor did he seek public attention. Unlike some of his contemporaries, who attempted to justify or glorify their wartime service, Sperrle faded into obscurity. He was reportedly in poor health, and he never regained a significant public role. He died in Munich on April 2, 1953. At the age of 60-8. Hugo Sperrle's legacy remains a subject of debate among historians. On one hand, he was a skilled commander who contributed significantly to the Luftwaffe's early successes. His leadership of the Condor Legion and Luftwaffe demonstrated organizational ability and military competence. On the other hand, his involvement in bombing campaigns that struck civilian populations cannot be easily dismissed. The fact that he was acquitted at Nuremberg does not erase the suffering caused by operations under his command. Instead, it highlights the complexities and limitations of post-war justice.
The case of Sperrle underscores a broader truth about the Nuremberg Trials. While they represented an unprecedented effort to hold leaders accountable for war crimes, they were not exhaustive. Many perpetrators were never prosecuted, and some who stood trial were acquitted due to insufficient evidence or the legal standards of the time. The issue of strategic bombing in particular was fraught with contradictions, since the Allies themselves had conducted massive raids on German and Japanese cities, often with devastating civilian casualties. To convict Sperrle for similar actions might have set a precedent implicating Allied commanders as well. In this sense, his acquittal reflected both the weaknesses and the pragmatism of international justice in 1948. Looking back, Hugo Sperrle's life offers a window into the evolution of modern warfare. From the experimental air missions of World War I to the ideological battleground of Spain to the vast campaigns of World War II, he witnessed and directed the rise of air power as a decisive force. His career also illustrates the moral ambiguities of military service under a totalitarian regime. Was he merely a professional soldier bound by duty and orders, or was he complicit in a system that waged total war against both armies and civilians? The Nuremberg judges answered in his favor, but history remains less forgiving. The story of Hugo Sperrle is not one of dramatic villainy or heroic defiance. Rather, it is a story of a capable commander who rose high, served faithfully, and then faded into obscurity, leaving behind a record marked by both military achievement and human tragedy. He stands as an example of those who, by virtue of circumstance and position, wielded immense power, but who escaped full accountability for the consequences of their actions. In the end, Sperrle died a free man, but his name remains tied to one of the darkest chapters of the 20th century and to the enduring question of what justice means in the aftermath of war.